Welcome back, guys. So, moving on from the last installment where I laid down a satin coat to seal in all the decking. That's all had a good couple of days to dry off. I've been busy doing other bits and pieces, so I've actually just left the model stand. So we're now on to weathering, and first jobs is the highlighting of the panel lines, just to bring the detail out a little bit. And I've just gone for my usual oil weathering. So what I've got here is a mix, and it's not just a pin wash mix, it's more of a shader mix, and it's 3 parts. So it's 1 part Abteilung smoke and 1 part Abteilung cream brown, and a final part of Dale & Rowney's raw umber. So equal parts, and you get this really nice sort of grimy, greasy brown colour. Trying to avoid going too dark, purely because we're going to start on the underside, and if it's too dark, it'll be a really strong contrast with the underside grey. But this colour, I think, should actually match quite nicely to not only the underside medium sea grey, but also the upper surfaces with the ocean grey and dark green, RAF dark green colours. So I thought it's kind of a one wash does all. And then once we've done the wash, panel line wash, we can then think about whether or not we want to come in and do some colour modulation, highlighting, enhance the shadows. So as always, same as my last build and quite a few builds, all I'm doing now is just gently running the panel line wash over the panel line details, and then obviously this kit is reasonably well riveted, so we're going to go over all the rivet lines as well, because we want to just get them to stand out and try and even up their tone, and just get that sort of general unity of the build together. The panel lines have, well, even the panel lines and the rivets seem to have taken the paint really well, but not to such an extent that it's filled it. You can't get any wash into them. So they stayed well and stayed nice and defined, which is really good. So that helps the modeler. There are some raised rivet details, but we'll still give them wash over. So we just, if I can get it in frame so you can actually see what I'm doing. So all we're doing is we're just taking not just an overly amount, but just a generous amount, and we're just painting it all over the panel lines. Now you could just do this wash over the whole surface. I don't think it needs it. I think if we limit it to the panel lines, when we come to take the overburden of wash off, then we'll naturally build in a bit of shading around the panel lines and the rivet lines, leaving some lightness in the center of panels, and that'll aid us for the overall look of the aircraft. And then we can come back in for some of these areas and maybe just put in a little bit more of a thinner wash, so it acts like a pin wash rather as this sort of creamy, might call it a sludge wash, I don't know. But it's really nice working with oils because they're so versatile in that you can, should you need to, strip it right back without damaging the underlying painted surface. You can blend them, modulate them, move them around. They're very much like enamels. Enamel washes will act and behave very similar to oil, although they're a lot thinner So they're better maybe for pin washers and streaking grime and stuff like that, whereas the oil, depending on how thin you make it, can act as a sort of a more grippy sludge wash. Or you could thin it a bit more and you've got a pin wash, or you're using it neat and you've got a shader. So they are very, very versatile. I quite like working with oils. And they don't stink too much. Unless, of course, you're using turpentine for a thinner or reducer. Turpentine is a strong product and it needs to be used in a well ventilated area. You should always be in a ventilated area when you're using sort of hydrocarbon based products, but turpentine is a very strongly scented product and gives off, expels a lot of VOCs. VOCs are volatile organic compounds, and they're not good for you. So it's very, very important when you're working with very strong smelling chemical products that you have adequate ventilation. And obviously if it's a heavy aerosol, you may consider wearing breathing protection to protect your lungs from particulate matter that's going into them, because it ain't going to do you any good. And you need more than just a spray booth filter unit to protect yourself. So there we go. There endeth the sermon for the day. So I think you've probably watched me now long enough. Just going in here, highlighting all those panel lines. What I'm going to do is I'm going to carry on off camera, and we'll get all of this initial shading done. Give it a little while to just dry off, take a grip of the model, and then we'll come in and we'll start removing it all and revealing how the first stage of panel line weathering is looking, and then we'll see where we're going to go for there. So we'll do the bottom side, get that cleaned off, and then we'll have the same process on the top side. And I'm actually quite interested. I will just do the whole model in one go, so I'm quite interested how this chipping that we've put in here is going to look once we put the oil wash down. I may actually, now we've just done that quickly, I may actually add a little bit more maybe lamp black or something in there just to highlight it, because it's a little darker up here and I don't know if that's going to be strong enough. So yeah, we'll do the underside first, and then we'll maybe come back in with a slightly darker wash just to increase the contrast on the upper surfaces. But I think it's going to look good. So we'll be back shortly. Right guys, welcome back. So I have done what I said I'd done. We've added a little ivory black to the initial wash mix. Oh, excuse me, I had to get grab a cup of tea. And we've given the upper surfaces a wash, and now the lower surfaces have dried off over about half an hour or so. So probably at the stage where we can think about trying to remove some of the wash and seeing what we're left with. So as always, just some good quality kitchen towel. You can start anywhere you like, but just rub in the direction of the airflow and see what we're left with. Now obviously it's not going to strip it all off in one go, but what it will do is it will help obviously work the wash into all the recesses, and then add a little tint to the underside grey to give it a bit of a more worn, grimed up look. And And with Tamiya satin varnish, it gives it just the right amount of stickability, I think I would call it. So you can leave some of this stuff on the surface, but remove the bulk of it to give you that overall weathered effect. So initially it doesn't matter really which way you take this stuff off, just so long as the last passes with whatever medium you're using to take this off is roughly in the direction of the airflow. And just be mindful that you've spent all this time putting this kit together. Don't be so heavy-handed that you start breaking parts off or twisting stuff, because you're rubbing like crazy to get this wash off. If it's being a bit stubborn, that's fine. We can come back in with a slightly moistened towel or a brush and work away at it that way. All we're doing here is just, as I said, working the wash into all the recessed detail and lifting the bulk of it away from the model. Usually you probably would have had the undercarriage away from the aircraft at this moment in time, but I actually want to put it on just so the aircraft's got something to sit on and protect the underside finish from scratches and knocks. So you're going to use a few pieces of kitchen towel. It's just the nature of the method. And it does look, crikey, we're just making everything look grey. Well, actually we are toning the paint down. We're really putting the highlight into the kit to lift the detail off the sort of monochrome surface. In reality, these aircraft were reasonably grimy underneath. There's quite a lot of oil leaks. Operating off grass or repaired runways, frontline operation units, makeshift surfaces, then there will be grime, dirt thrown up on them. Maintenance will add an element of grime. Gun smoke, cordite smoke, oil leaks, burning, scorching. These aircraft were put through the ringers in the conflict, and some of them were very, very grimy. What I'm going for is a well-used look, but not overly abused. So we want that grimy look, but I do want to have an all-over worn look rather as a specifically heavy worn look. And the beauty with weathering, it's down to the modeller's taste, so you can go as far or as clean as you want it to be. Some modelers prefer having a nice clean crisp factory finish. Other modelers will go to the utmost lengths to achieve a really realistic worn operational look. Other modelers will put together a model that looks like it's been lying in a field for 40 years and it looks amazing. And it really is down to personal taste and what makes the modeler happy. And if you're happy with your result, then nobody can question it, because it's your model and you do it the way you want to do it. So I've said that all along in my, certainly since being on YouTube. I encourage people just to do it the way they want to do it. Trial and error, have a go. If it doesn't work, nothing lost. If you do get on with a particular method of weathering, excellent stuff. You know what you're confident with, and you can get that sort of predictability of result to a finished model that you're happy with. And so long as you're happy with it, that's all that matters. So there we go, we're coming at now. And we're getting into all these little nooks and crannies, and we're getting this, the bulk of this wash lifted off. There are areas that are still, you know, quite heavily coated, but we'll come back and sort them in a minute. The grey tone has certainly taken a nice sort of shift in its hue, and the detail is certainly popping. That border has, you know, the surface detail that border's produced is really, really good. There's a little inconsistency here and there. There's some areas on one part of the fuselage or wing that are raised detail, and others that are recessed, so there's obviously that little inconsistency in tooling. But it's a 35th scale Spitfire, so I can live with it. Yeah, I'm not a purist by any stretch of the imagination. Just love building model airplanes and model tanks and anything in the world in miniature, so I can live with minor inaccuracies. Anyway, I think you probably get bored of listening to me chuntering on and rubbing away at the model. What I'm going to do is just carry on. I'm going to remove the rest of the oil from the lower surfaces, and we'll move on to the upper surfaces and clean them off. And then when we're at that point that we've gotten the bulk of the oil weathering off all the surfaces, we can then come back and look at how we tidy up the areas that are hard to reach, or how we want to further either enhance or modulate the weathering that we've already done. So as I said, I will go and I'll finish doing this cleanup all over the kit, and we'll come back and we'll look and see what we've got and where we move next. So we'll see you in a little while. Right guys, welcome back. So we have a pile of spent tissue to get rid of, and we have an aircraft model that has had its first sort of weathering and rub off, and we're needing to look at it with a critical eye to see, are there any areas that still has too much wash in? Do we want to come in and try and modulate some of this a little bit more? Even here, looking at this, I can see, hold it this way around, you know, we've got some wash in here in the back of the wings. You know, we want to move on. We've got some wash here. So there's a little bit of texture in the semi-gloss varnish, so it is gripping the look at that, I've broken the bloody antenna aerial. And this is the thing, you've got to be careful when you're doing this, and I'm a bit clumsy, so we'll have to glue that up. But we need to get it to the point that we're happy with it. Now if we look underneath, we've got a nice reasonably even finish, but there are areas, you know, such as the wingtip here, in these bits here, that are particularly hard to get to without, you know, risking damaging the undercarriage. So we need to figure out what we're going to do about that, just to do a bit of blending and moving around of the wash. Same on the tails. So let me just get a bit of glue, and we'll just try and glue that aerial antenna, because clumsy old me has snapped it. I really probably should have just left this off whilst we were doing this and only glued it on at the end of the build, but me being me, I'm a little bit impatient, so I didn't do that, but I think we've got that saved. Yep. Right, so blending. Well, there's loads of different brushes you can use, and I think we saw that on the Catalina that I've not long finished. We've got small precision brushes like this, or we've got flat wide area brushes, and then we've got the softer brushes to do fading. For precision stuff, probably get a smaller brush maybe, and we can come in and we can start working the wash, thinning it out, especially on this sort of metallic area where we want to just make sure that that metal's still got a shine to it. Here it's gripping the aileron, so we can come in it seems it's a bigger area. We can come in with a slightly larger brush. We'll use one of these flats, and we're just soaking it, letting it wick up, and then we're just wicking away the bulk of the Sansador, and then we're just in the direction of the airflow, just moving it over the wing. You can do that here if you want, and that'll help create a little bit of streaking. And all this will be doing is reactivating the or rehydrating the oils and distribute them over the surface. If there's an area that we want to pay particular attention to, then we can actually come in here and work on that area, and you can see that's starting to lift the oil away and bring that area back to a more bright, vibrant finish. So this will work over the whole airframe. So it's just about you as a modeler going in and working the wash until you're happy with it and you're satisfied that it's giving you the effect you're looking for in your model. If we think we've wetted the areas too much, we can come back in with a bit of paper towel and just very gently blot up any excess. And the other thing we can do, if you look at this wing, it's still quite wet, is we can come in with a nice soft blending brush. Make sure there's no oil paint in it, otherwise you'll end up leaving it on there, the model, and we can just run that gently over the model. That will blot up the Sansador and help dry it off. So that's kind of how I work the weathering of these things. Now when it dries, or you could still do it when it's wet, but when it dries we can then think about coming in with other colors to put some highlights in the panels. So as we did on the Catalina, then we can use whites and buffs on the sea grey or the ocean grey, and we can use yellows and tans on the green to sort of add a bit of color variation to the aircraft. But that is again down to taste. If we look on the underside here, then this area here in the oil cooler was a little bit tricky to clean. So the same moist brush that we're using on the upper surfaces, we're just going in here, and there's enough oil paints there that we can actually add in some streaking. You can work that in here. And in here around the undercarriage we were struggling to get. And you can do the same thing if you wanted to. You can do the whole wing surface and start creating that general air streaked weathered look. You might need to rehydrate the brush a little, then wick off the bulk of it. You don't want to flood the areas, but you can come in and just front to back, and that's putting in that little bit of streaking, and it'll help unify the overall weathered effect. There we go, we've got a bit of streaking coming out from where the radiator was. A little bit of oil streaking down the middle. And we can come back in here with specific oils, pick out panels and put streaking in. But the main thing we're doing here is we're just trying to get an even primary weathered finish. Again, if it's too much, blot it with a bit of kitchen towel. And that will help dry in time. So, there we go, we can see this wing is starting to dry off here now. That's quite a nice unified finish. I'm going to just go over the whole airframe like this, and then we can think about doing some modulation on the top and oil staining on the lower surfaces. So we'll be back shortly. Welcome back, guys. So I have moved on a little from where we left off, and I have done a little bit of oil rendering. Still a bit of stuff there needs blending in, but I've put a bit of oil streaking and weathering on the underside of the aircraft. A little bit of cordite stains just at the shell ejection ports, and the same around the gun apertures on the leading edge of the wings. It's had a matte coat before I did the oil rendering. And if you've watched my last video, which was the Catalina build, I've just weathered it exactly the same way I did for that build. We've got some fuel stains up here. You can see the nice chipping coming through, and a little bit of mottling on the green and grey colours. A little bit of streaking. So all in all, we're just about ready to get the masks off and think about final assembly. So we've got the two doors to put on the wings. I've got here painted at the side. We've got the exhaust stacks all painted up and grimed up, and we've got the armoured windscreen to go on too. So without further ado, let's get a pair of tweezers and start pulling the masking off, because I'm really interested to see how it's looking after all this paint and weathering. So just pick a corner and then just gently pull it away, and we'll get a bit of white tack in a minute. There we go. So there's the door off. We've still got to paint the inside of the door. So there's a little bit of painting to do there. Detailing for the emergency crowbar. Sometimes this white tack can be an absolute pain in the rear to get off. So what I usually do is just get some more white tack and we just bond it together, and it will lift it away. I do wonder sometimes if it reacts slightly to the weathering mediums, but if you just tack it with a bigger piece of white tack, it will actually lift away the remaining white tack. Need to make sure we get it all off so we can get this piece painted. Interior green. There we go. So a little bit of detailing to do on the inside. The outside's all nicely painted, slightly weathered and chipped around the edge, which is nice. So I'll blend in with the rest of it. We'll just get in here and we'll use the tack to remove any residue of tack left on the aircraft. And then we've got a piece here that we use to hold the door in. So we'll just sort of work at that. I'll probably do that off camera. So next thing, let's get the canopy masks peeled. This is always interesting to see how well or not, as the case may be. Okay, so we've got a little bit of creep under the edge here. That's a shame, but with a wooden toothpick, cocktail stick, should just be able to gently, not too much pressure, you can burnish off and get in there with a white tack, and that will again lift. And then finally Q-tip to polish up the canopy. If needed, a little bit of saliva just to act as a polishing medium. There we go. Just burnish off those last sections in there. That's it. There we go. So that looks looking nice. A couple of bits on the back here. So that's been my fault for not checking it was all burnished down before I started painting. It's not the first time it's happened, likely will not be the last, but it's a very easy fix. Right, let's have a look at the front canopy and see how our masking's held up here. So just in at the corner. Yeah, there's a bit of creep under this as well. I've really not done a very good job at securing this masking, which is a bit of a shame, but it happens sometimes. There we go. So the bulk of that's not too bad. That's just a little bit of crazing here. As you can see though, just with the end of the cocktail stick, we're able to burnish that back to the canopy frame. And these jobs are the little jobs that make all the difference. I think we'll have to come in here with a little bit of paint and touch in. There's a few spots where we've burnished the paint off, especially at the top there, got a little bit of silver, but on the whole it's not too bad. Just give it a little rub on the inside. It's nice and open. A bit of white tack in there. There we go. I'll just fish this white tack out of here. Splendid. Right. Now we have the front windscreen to put in. So first things first, we need to get the masking off it. So I masked both inside and out to make sure we didn't get any overspray whatsoever on the glazing. Yeah, I really have not done a very good job at sealing this down. There's a little bit of creep under this, but nothing too deadly. That's cleaned away nicely. We'll offer this up. It fits rather nicely on the front of the aircraft. So to fix this in place, I'm just going to use a little bit of white glue, PVA. That'll be more than strong enough to hold that canopy glass in place. Right, there still is a little bit of cleaning up to do, I see, just here. So before we glue it on, we do need to make sure that all areas needing to be cleaned are cleaned. Because when we get the glass on, we're not going to have much opportunity to scrub away as freely as we are now. We also need to make sure the front glass is clean before we seal it in with the armoured glass. Right, now that we're happy that that's okay, white glue, just use the toothpick as an applicator. And there's quite a nicely defined segment here on the fuselage for the foot of the glass to fit in. So we can just put a decent amount of glue in there, not too much that it's going to go everywhere, but enough to hold the glass. We're also going to do this raised rim here, so we're going to run a little bit of glue here just to help hold it in place. Just a very thin layer around the top. And when we've got that done, the tricky bit is going to be getting this on the aircraft without dropping it and smudging everything. So using the tweezers, lay it down and then just gently line it up into its locating slot. Press it down. Press it onto the windscreen and that's it. PVA glue will dry clear. If you want to just moisten the Q-tip and just wipe the excess away on the front, that will help. Realign the windscreen and then we're done. Last but not least, if the other canopies are anything to go by, this one's obviously got, the main canopy has got creep under the tape, but we'll see. Being very careful because the moulding is very thin, so we don't want to stress and crack it now we've gotten this far down the build. So just a little bit at a time, pull away the masking. There we go. It's all the masking off. And it's not actually too bad. I'll just use a bit of white tack to lift any paint flakes away. There's a little piece here on the grey side of the canopy where we've got a little bit of bleed. So again, just use the toothpick. And a Q-tip. Burnish that up. Right, now that one needs to slide over here. And I do want to fix it in place because I don't want it dropping off and breaking. So again, we're just going to need to get some white glue and just a couple of dots on the inside, either side, just on the rail. Enough that it's going to grip. Right, and then let's get this positioned. Now make sure it's centered, and then a gentle pressure on the sides just to make it bond with the aircraft. And we just need to let that glue set before we do anything else now. The canopy is actually a little bit wide compared to the aircraft, so what we can do is get a little bit of masking tape, de-tack it on the back of our hands, a pair of tweezers. We can just affix the tape over the glass. No, maybe not actually with the decals there. No, we'll just chance it. I think once the glue dries up, it will bond. It just needs to bond a little bit. The glue will dry clear, and you won't see it. So there we go. We are really pushing on with this. Hopefully you can see it's looking rather nice. The decals have really performed well underneath the oil coats and the matte varnish. They actually look painted on, which is quite surprising, but they are. I'm quite pleased with them. So what have we got to do? Well, we've got these two flaps to put on. We've got the pitot tube to put on. We've got the rear view mirror to put on, and I also need to put a little bit of silver foil on that. And then we've got the nav lights to put on, and last but not least, the antenna wire. So I'm going to let all this dry up. Oh yeah, I'm going to fix on the exhaust stubs, and we'll paint the inside of the door. We'll get that detailed and decaled, and then we'll come back for the last job, which will be putting on the exhaust staining. So see you again soon.